This is the Fleet Europe podcast, hosted by Jonathan Manning, editor and LCV expert for Fleet Europe. Today's topic, the value of conversion and upfitting in TCO. Introducing today's guests, Thomas Unger, the Chief Marketing Officer at Sortimo, and Anne-Lise Castel, the Head of LCV and ELCV at Arval. Enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to this Fleet Europe podcast. In this podcast, we discuss the most relevant trends and news from the fleet and mobility industry. I'm Jonathan Manning, a contributing editor to Nexus, publisher of Fleet Europe and GlobalFleet.com, an organizer of industry events such as the Commercial Fleet Summit, which is a fantastic forum for discussing innovative ideas all to do with light commercial vehicles. I'll be the host of this podcast, which today is about a really innovative idea concerning the protection of residual values. Every fleet wants to minimize the TCO of their vans or their converted vehicles. And so today we've got a particularly innovative concept to discuss. I'd like to start by welcoming our guests, Anne-Lise Castel, Head of LCV and ELCV at Arval, and Thomas Unger, Managing Director Sales and Marketing of Sortimo. Welcome to you both. Just to start, I can't imagine there are many listeners who aren't familiar with your businesses, but just in case there are a few who are new to the industry, Anne-Lise, could you give a brief overview of Arval?
Yes, of course. Arval actually is one of the most operational leasers in Europe, but not only. We are covering now 28 countries within the world. And now I'm here to represent actually the LCV and to promote and to push this area. And I'm glad to be here today in order to discuss with our partners and with our fellows actually to build a really an ecosystems in order to support the transition also to new LCV's generation.
Perfect. And Thomas, could you outline Sortimo's business?
Yeah, sure. Sortimo is market leader for intelligent mobility in commercial fleets. So that means we convert vans as a turnkey solution, we call it. We do everything the customer needs to really start the business and the work and increase productivity in service fleets. That's the main business we work on. And also from my side, happy to be here and thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Thomas, I understand you have some new research that shows how certain facilities that you might upfit in a van originally can help its residual value at the end. Could you give us a brief overview of that research?
Sure. We just looked into how is our how are our products used and how are they reused and what possibilities do we have? In a classical way, it's quite complex to use a conversion. Again, it's a fixed installation in the van, and that's a complete concept we work on at the moment. And of course, for sustainability reason, it's a plus, but of course it should be also a plus in cost to reuse or repurpose a van or the racking or the conversion. And as a complete concept, we always focus on, as I said, productivity for our fleets. And in our engineering concept, we talk about the 4R concept for our products. That means first R stands for robust engineering, to really make sure that the products can be used in several life cycles. The second one is for repurpose, so really to reuse it, and the concept behind is high flexibility to remove, click in and click out the racks and the solutions into and out of the van. Of course, then you need the third R for repair. If there's some minor damages, before you go in the next life cycle, you do the repair and afterwards also recycle the materials. That's our 4R concept. That's where it started with. But we really looked into how is the residual value after a first life cycle, and we identified there is an immense value for the racking and also the other conversions we do, and that's what we work on to provide that as a repurposing concept for our customers in the future.
Thank you. Annelies, do you have a sense of what proportion of the LCVs or ELCVs do have dedicated racking and lining in the vans?
Actually, 80% of the LCVs are standard vehicles, okay, and 20% of them are converted vehicles. In terms of conversions, we have, for instance, the tipper, the boxes, and we could have also the shelves. As for the shelves, I don't have any figures in my mind like this, but I think it's in top 3 in terms of conversions in LCVs or LCVs. And for an operational leaser, what is complicated is to quote this residual value of the outfitters. And for us, the standard and standardization is the better, the best for us, and converted in factory or converted by main or most known converters. It's really important for us because it helps us to standardize and to have an idea of the cost, the residual value. And that's why I think that the Sortimo solution is really interesting in that case, in order for us first to standardize an approach like shelves, and then to be sure that we can reuse these shelves after the first use, and to rent it in another customers, for instance. Yes.
And maybe just to add that,
Yeah.
I mean, our business is mainly individualized, customized for the fleets because they need to provide a rack that really fits to their needs in their service process to have the highest productivity. And that's exactly where we plan also to collaborate, to deep dive into how can we, out of that, make a residual value where out of our research it is available. But today the fact is fleets pay a full pay the full bill in the end in the first life cycle. So it's depreciated to zero value after a life cycle of 3 or 4 years today. That's what we want to do to change.
And Thomas, just for someone who's new to the industry, what is the payment mechanism for a fleet that is racking or putting a customized solution inside its van? Is it added to the lease rental? Do they buy the van and negotiate separately with yourselves for the racking, or does the dealer do all of it for them? How do they fund this?
There are actually various business models. It could be in the simplest way a factory solution from the manufacturer, but that's a very small volume today because they will always talk about standard solutions and not the customized. So the big volume is in the customized segment, and then we talk about a double invoice. It's 2 invoices, from the van, a second invoice for the conversion, and that comes in the end together in one leasing. Like Arai combines those bills and converts it into a monthly leasing payment, and that's in the end the payment for use. And the better we can downsize that, of course, the better is the return on the investment. Because, and that's again the speciality of commercial fleets, our customers need to earn money with those fleets and need to have it in the most productive way, and therefore they invest to gain then the money out of their processes and their services to their customers.
I wanted to add something about what you said concerning the invoices. For us, the complexity is to have 2 invoices. So that's why also we need some good partners in order to quote or to make some assumption about the residual value after. The other topic concerning what you've presented is also interesting for short-term rental. I think, because or mid-term rental, not only for long-term rental, because some of our customers, they have peak season. And for peak season, you need to transform a normal panel van into, for instance, last mile delivery vehicles with racking. And that's why the Sortimo's conversions could be really useful in order to address this kind of topics like peak seasons. And you put the rack into the panel vans, and when you don't need it anymore, okay, you can reuse it for another use or another panel van. So I think it could be really interesting to try that kind of things also.
So a bit like winter tires for Northern Europe.
Exactly.
And what we built, we call it Sortimo railing system. That's exactly the purpose for that.
Yeah.
To make it happen that you can repurpose a van to use it for service industry, but also for courier express parcel. That means we have a rail in the van, we like a platform, and in that rail you can click in a service rack, but you can also click in courier express parcel service, and that is really just a flexible platform to enable that model in the future.
And flexibility, this is exactly what we offer also with our service, which is called Flex.
Yeah.
Actually, and through Flex you offer flexibility to the customers for a period of time, for instance, or in terms of contracts. So this is, I think, it's an interesting product to be developed. Yes.
I know it's an outline concept at the moment, but what are your ideas between the first life and the second life? Would the vehicles all go back to a single point? Would they go back to individual dealers, to original fitters? How would the equipment be removed from one van and reinstalled in the next?
Also, there are possible concepts because if it's a specialized rack for one customer, quite often they say, can I reuse it? Today it's just not possible because the dismantling process for the rack is too complex. That's why it does not happen. Now we simplify that, and we assume that most fleet customers will really approach it to say, we keep the rack back and we put that rack into our new vehicle. So that would be one possibility. The other possibility is, why not take the rack back and have a lower cost possibilities for small, medium entities, or in general service crafts they can reuse and maybe are happy to have a high quality rack. That's why we engineered it like I explained before, and can reuse it for a lower price.
And do you have a sense of how long you might warranty the racking?
I mean, yes, but for warranty reason, if we look to our current solution, we have many examples where we still have customers who buy their van and use it for 8 or 10 van. It's for 8 or 10 years, so it's not a problem at all. Now we make it even more robust because we say it's a difference having one customer for 8 or 10 years or having several customers for different periods. But still, we're experienced, and from that perspective, we are totally confident that we have a robust product that will last for 8 or 10 years.
Annelies, we hear a lot about sustainability as a concept. How important do you find it when customers are selecting their vehicles, and how do you think this would fit into ESG agendas that major corporates have?
Of course, when we are talking about sustainability, we also think about the electrification of LCV, and that's why Arval also is supporting the electrification of LCVs, of course. And for the moment, it's only representing 12% of the market, of the European market. But we've seen that it has grown really fast last year, something like 65% within a year, which is really wonderful, I think. So we support, for instance, our customers to switch to these electric vehicles by the electrification audit, for instance. So we make an audit to see whether their vehicles, and due to their journey, if they can switch from ICE to EV. We have a large catalog also from ELCV, energy solutions like the pass also in order to charge the vehicles. And I think also the telematics is really useful also for our customers in order to manage not only their costs, but also the energy costs, the localization of other EV charger. So I think sustainability is really a key topic for us and for the moment in order to support our customers in their transition. Really.
And Thomas, from your perspective, what extra challenges do electric vehicles present in terms of racking? We just think of more cables, more wires internally, battery packs and so on. Does it present any different challenges for you?
You mean specifically for us or in general?
For racking in general,
yeah. No, for racking in general, I mean, the outline of the vans changed a little bit because aerodynamics becomes more important. Weight becomes more important to increase the range. So these are the changes that have effects for us. That's all reflected in our developments from the last years. Besides that, in general, I think it's still the infrastructure. Where can you charge your vehicle? The models, we have more and more new models with higher range, but still, in the end, it must be a good return on investment. So I think that's the most important point for fleets. And return on investment means productivity on the one hand. That's where we luckily see most successful fleets to focus on, because cost saving on the other side, because that's compared to productivity, you have the TCO, which is important, which is an operational necessity, but cost saving in the end is not a strategy. And to really think about where can we have a competitive advantage to other services, I think it's key to look at the productivity, and that's actually what we see from successful fleets.
Okay. Do you have a target customer or a pilot customer who might be trialing this second life use?
We actually talked to some already, and we see high interest in the market. I don't want to name a specific customer right now at that stage, but what we can say, and we discussed that here in Brussels, also in the Commercial Fleet Advisory Board, we will have a working group on that, and several fleet customers already mentioned, hey, we want to participate. It seems very interesting for us, and it's a new approach that we will challenge together and develop also in the Commercial Fleet Advisory Board.
And Annelies, from your perspective, are there any particular ideas you've seen recently that you thought that you would be really keen to implement, or that you've seen working well?
What I've seen working well, I actually, when I was talking about the electrification, the new eLCV are really amazing, I think, especially in heavy vans. So make a lot of improvements in terms of range, for instance, but also on the last mile deliveries vans. So I think it's really interesting to test for the customers and to see whether it fits with their journey. But I think now it is, because they have the range. There are infrastructure as well. So this is good point. Where we can also improve ourselves is through telematics, I think, as I mentioned already, in order to and IA, maybe how IA will improve AI.
Sorry.
So sorry, AI in English. Sorry, will really improve the journeys and the operational, the daily life of our customers. So for sure, there are still many potential, and for our sector, for LCVs, eLCVs, telematics, and as you mentioned also, artificial intelligence.
Okay. And Thomas, what do you think I should have asked today?
Sorry?
What do you think I should have asked? What would have been the best question for me to ask?
I think for me it was a nice discussion. It was really fun, and of course our all passion is about LCVs, and as I mentioned before, how to increase the productivity, how to look forward in a positive way to change the market in terms of all those, let's say, challenges that we have actually in the markets from economical perspective. And I think the ideal question for me, maybe to sum up with that, is how do we overcome that and really come to an economic situation where companies invest in their future, because also when and I directly answer that question now, if we look also in the car pool, it becomes older and older and older, and I think there is a lack in investment that's in the economy in general, but you see that also in fleets, and I think that's something I'm convinced in the next year we will change, we will overcome that, and really looking forward to the future for that.
Perfect. Well, thank you very, very much for your time, to Thomas Unger and Annelies Castel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.